and today we welcome once again Sharron of Gaia. Welcome, Sharron. How are you?
I am, oh, that's a very good question, really. I'm pretty good. I am aware that I have very much felt as though I'm in these huge undulations today of energy. And it's not very long ago that Gaia spoke to me about how it was as though I was kind of climbing up this big ladder to the stars and gathering information and then returning to Earth to deliver the information. And although that's just a metaphor, I kind of feel like I've been doing that. And I feel like I've been riding these huge energetic waves and trying to find balance in them and trying to find some middle ground in them. But this feels to me that it's our experience on Earth today.
It's been my experience on Earth for a couple of weeks, I've noticed. Anyway, friends, today why are we talking with Sharron of Gaia? We are talking about the awakening of the divine masculine. Now, I've got to tell all of you that I heard this. I heard this conversation or this topic come up in a conversation Sharron was having, and then a couple of days later, there was Tim Wilde talking about it. And I just figured that it would be a good thing to have Sharron come on the channel and tell us what that means, awakening of the divine masculine. However, in the weeks following all of that, with Sharron and I speaking, we realized there are two different aspects, or maybe there's more than two different aspects about it. Therefore, this is part one, where we're going to focus on the awakening of the divine masculine. What is that? And what can be expected and why? Okay. And then we'll come back and do another part where we talk about the divine masculine from the divine counterpart aspect. And some people, well, will say twin flame, but from what I'm understanding about twin flame, it is actually very different from what we think it is. And so that's going to be talked about in part two of this divine masculine awakening. So I hope I said that right. Sharron, let's do this part. The awakening of the divine masculine. What the heck is that? Sorry.
Well, to me, it's this very poignant, very exciting moment on the planet because it means that the men in our world are beginning to awaken. And the divine masculine, they lead the way with that. So the divine masculine are here, in my view, to very much collapse the old paradigms, the old patterns, the old systems. And they come with an ultimate partnership with their divine feminine. And so we're in the kind of, I guess, the last chapters of this connection, and they are in their awakening to a higher consciousness. So
Okay.
their hearts are opening and they are having a lot of experiences where they're being asked to investigate what is true for them now and what isn't. And to look at perhaps the ways in which those programs, those patterns, the conditioning that they've had from their families or their culture or their history,
Mm,
and they're being invited to examine those programs and patterns to see what holds water and what doesn't.
mm. I like that. I like how you explained that. I mean, I agree. There's been a lot of conditioning. Well, we've all gone through conditioning, whether we are relating to the divine masculine or the divine feminine. But the divine feminine, and in this instance, I mean, women have been waking up and coming into their place and understanding who they are and what their purpose is at this time. And we have been doing that for a long, long time. That's not to say men haven't been, but they have been the lesser in number, so to speak of, when we talk about how the awakening process has gone on for so far in the journey, right?
Well, I think it's because we hold different roles. So a beautiful analogy that Gaia gave me once was that the divine feminine would take the sword and cut the path through the forest, and the divine masculine would follow, and they would follow by laying down the bricks on the path, and then their next role would be to collapse the systems and structures. So they showed up following on the path with big heavy ropes over their shoulders, attached to the buildings, attached to the systems, and they were pulling them down as they left. And then together we create the new.
Okay. And it's amazing because the divine feminine has done a lot of work already. And it's almost like we showed the way. Dare I say it? Right? Because when you describe it like that, I feel like we've shown the way, they're following, and they're going to start laying the foundation, like you're saying, and then collapsing all systems. I can't even relate to this concept. I've got, as we've been speaking, I've been thinking about this. Like even now, when you started telling me, I've been thinking about this, and I'll tell you why I can't relate to this. Not because I don't agree with it. I've never thought about it before. I've just never thought about their part and what they're doing. In my head, it's always been, oh, these people have been the persecutors. These people have held this world in the way and allowed it to be the way it has been. I've been a little bit like, I can't be asked with it. I can't be bothered with this. You know what I mean? With this aspect of it. But I am so glad that you're talking about this because, of course, they have a part to play. You know, I've been so focused on my mission that I didn't think about what part do they have to play. And for me, it's like I have in my whole life, I've been like really happy on my own. I'm a happy person on my own. I make a lot of great decisions, and when I've been in relationships, it's kind of very confusing, and I don't really know how to balance it. And it maybe for me, my divine masculine has been more operating from the perspective of warrior, move forward, But I feel as I've evolved, I could see the warrior, the peaceful warrior woman I am, and the medicine woman I have, and all of that. And that has been my journey. But this thing I've never thought about. Now I often think cynical thoughts like, oh, look at the way of the world. This is what happened when men are in charge, You know what I mean? But it is more than that, isn't it?
Yes, and in our history, in our ancient history, we were the leaders at one point, and we didn't get it right either.
Yes.
Excuse me. And so this, to me, we're really in this time of everything being balanced or being sought to be balanced in so many different ways. And to me, this is the way in which partnership is being balanced. And so there's different roles to play. There are different patterns to collapse. And so we do this as this incredible pair of beings, really.
Wow. Yes. So I want to go back to them awakening. Have you seen evidence of this yet?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So in my work, there have been over the last couple of years, I think, probably the last couple of years, I've had more and more men coming to see me. And the statistics of that on my YouTube channel as well has gone from 2% male being my audience to now being 20%.
Awesome. Wow.
And so that's happened over a period of time.
Yeah.
The men who have come to see me in the last year are the most remarkable, beautiful, incredible, amazing men. And honestly, they just touched my heart because they would come and they would deliver statements to me such as, I want to be the best father, the best husband that I can be, and I want you to help me with that. I have made a lot of money in my life, and now I want to do good with it. I want you to help me figure out what it is that I should do.
Wow.
I want to go and build a community, and I want some assistance as to where that should be. And a lot of women have come with that particular question as well. But it's this shift, and I've been attuning to it through the feelings in my heart as well, noticing that when I attune to the divine masculine, I feel things in my heart, and when I cross-check that with men in my life, I get some acknowledgement of that.
Right. Now that you say that, I know I asked you for evidence of it, but I reflect on my last 18 months, and I've certainly seen in my world, there's about 5 men, five of them that have come into my world, and some of them. John Jeremiah is one of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've met Stuart Cheney, but he's one of them. And Mark. These are friends that we've met through our mutual friend, Carol.
Yeah.
And what I noticed about them was they were just so loving. Like, I know Mark absolutely loves and mothers his son, because he has co-parenting with his ex-partner, but everything is about his son. And then there's Stuart, who is like, when you speak to Stuart, it's all about love. It's all about operating from love. And he so connects to the Magdalene, and he so connects to Mother Mary. And, he recognizes himself, has memories of himself at the crucifixion of Jesus. And if you know anything about that, there were more, it was the women that were there, and so I feel like, yes, thank you for the reminder, because I certainly have experienced these divine masculine counterparts, in friendship, in whatever. And I have to say with them, like I've been saying about them, I've been saying it like this. It's so wonderful to see men tuning into their divine feminine self. That is how I describe it, because we've been lucky enough to experience them. We went to Rotoponamu last year, a group of us. Mark was part of it, and we have our other friend Craig Lyle, who was part of it. And one of the things that stuck out to me was we went to the hot pools after we'd done our prayers and everything. We were dressed in our bathing suits. A couple of them were wearing bikinis, and we never got one look of suggestiveness or anything from them. They were like, just, we are here with you. We are friends. We are equals. There's nothing. I look at you and I see the love I have for you is that of my sister, and I had not in my entire life experienced something like that. So there you go. I've experienced it and I didn't realize it.
Yes.
And you just highlighted that to me, right?
And that's what we do. When we drop in, we reflect to one another the things that maybe need to be highlighted or need to be absorbed or noticed.
Yeah. Receptivity is one of the words that I would use to describe it. Receptivity. I've seen receptivity in these beautiful friends, brothers of light, and that I've not seen anywhere before. And I've said it so many times in the last year, but I did not realize it had anything to do with this awakening of the divine masculine. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. I asked for the example, but I already had them too. But thank you for that. Sharron, I want to ask this question because you said something in one of your videos about they've been tampered with. What does that mean?
Well, it's been my understanding that because the divine masculine are more grounded in the physical, that they have been interfered with, or the what would be another way of saying it, their passageway to their divine feminine has been interfered with. So there's been interference, like perhaps losing money, businesses collapsing, perhaps ill health, perhaps other things falling by the wayside, perhaps not being able to do or move to where they want to move to, but interference on that very physical level is what I was shown. And
okay.
And so because the masculine work in the physical, they were interfered with more than the feminine, because the feminine work more primarily with the metaphysical, so we would have noticed. And so that to me was, like a diversion tactic or an interference tactic that I was shown, and that it's been another thing for us to work through, because essentially the those who don't want us to ascend, they have been doing all sorts of things to prevent these connections coming together, because these connections, one of the things that Gaia said to me very early on about these connections is that when they come together, they create ripples of love that roll out across the planet, that makes ascension occur.
Oh, wow. That's just amazing. That's profound. That is so profound.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that we're moving towards this alignment, equality, balance. And they have gone through so much. I mean, like, men go through a lot. I look at it, and I look at my family members, my nephews, and I look at my uncles, and I think, there's been so much pressure for them to perform a certain way, to be a certain way. They've been programmed. Men don't cry. Why would you carry around a soft toy, for example? That's not what boys do, that sort of thing. And I used to work at retirement village years and years ago, and it was so interesting. We noticed that the elderly gentlemen that lived in the service departments, a group of them were friends. And what they actually had confessed was that they had never experienced holding a soft toy. And if it is a gift that anybody wanted to give them, that would be the thing. There was about 5 of them that said they would like a soft toy.
How lovely.
Exactly. And it's like, I worked there long ago, but just thinking about it, that was like 20 years ago. There was obviously some aspects of this coming to the forefront, and it took them so long to say they would like a soft toy. And like that generation, baby boomers would have been like, the early baby boomers, they would have been, well, you could imagine a boy being little and 10 years old and having a soft toy. It was not spoken of, not allowed.
I guess so.
Yeah, yeah. So they've kind of really missed out on the softer things of life, haven't they?
Well, because they've been trained and programmed to man up, to be strong, to be tough, to be able to persevere.
Yeah. It
And
may go on.
the whole thing about performance has been
Yeah.
huge in the
Show
summer.
yourself, you're a man, do this, do that.
Yeah,
Men don't
win
do
at
that.
all costs.
Yes, the win at all costs.
Be the winner.
Be the winner.
So many of those paradigms and patterns have been there from childhood.
Yeah. So you have really awakened me to this, our whole world's going to be different in 12 months' time. And more importantly, my whole world's going to be different in 12 months' time, because I have really not given them much. Men, I have not given them much like place in my world. I like being independent and all of those things. And I don't know, I'm going to have a culture shock when I'm going to have to be, I mean, I love my brothers of light, as you know, I've told you about them now. But I think, like, if I had to have this relationship, that's going to be a paradigm shift in my head, because I don't know.
It doesn't mean that you have to be less independent.
Sorry?
It doesn't mean that you have to give up independence. It might just shift its form. I feel that it's about sovereignty, that each of us comes into this higher aspect of our own sovereignty. And then there's this other energy that gets created, which is the union energy. And it's the union energy that we grow and nurture and develop. And it's very beautiful and respectful and full of love. And and it respects each of our individual sovereignty, because we may each have tasks to complete or missions to perform or desires to be met. I don't know the ins and outs of all of that, but that's what I feel about it, is that there's this third energy, which is the union energy. And that's what we're perhaps developing now as we're beginning to examine these variant aspects of the masculine and the feminine. And they are as well. The men in our world are that they are noticing and speaking of their hearts opening and feeling those experiences or those sensations in their hearts.
So for me, it's not my independence I fear. It's me having a culture shock of having to consider someone else in my world. You know, I have no problems to consider my child. I have no problems to sacrifice and consider my grandchild or my pet. But, you know, that person, like, yeah, that for me is a culture shock. And, you know,
how will that show up, do you think?
how it will show up? I probably have to, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of feel like, oh, I've got to think about this other person. I might have to be accountable to that other person. I'm generally not accountable to anyone but me. You see?
Or perhaps in your being accountable to yourself, that will automatically mean that you're accountable to them.
Yeah,
because of the love that you hold.
Yeah. You know, but yeah, I definitely have got, for me, it'll be an adjustment. And I will obviously go slow. If I'm in that situation, I'm going to have to go slow, because as much as I know, I told you about my divine counterpart just briefly. I also, although I knew it, I really struggled with the idea that that was going to be in my life, and I didn't know how I was going to cope with that. With that, now having that other person in my life, and this is coming from programming. This is coming from past lives where I was suppressed, you know, or whatever, like, you know, or just even watching my parents and their relationship, because they are baby boomers, and how they had relationship, and saying, I don't want to have that. So I've been really like talk to the hand, because I don't really want to give away any of myself, because I don't want anybody taking that part of me. So you see how many women are going to have these problems?
Well, they're just things to work through, aren't they?
Yeah, culture shock. And you know, the other thing is, we've had to do it for a long time on our own. And I feel like maybe this is why it's happening now, because now perhaps we are more receptive after going through everything. We've mellowed out in a way, and then mellowing out is not about, it's not about being weak. Mellowing out is about having wisdom.
I think that that's a key word.
You know, and saying, yeah. And, you know, we've done the work. Like, I know for myself, I have a good relationship with source energy. Right. And I've really been seeing how good the relationship is again, like, you know, spot on, talking like you're just right next to me. Like, you know, it's amazing. So, wow, that's going to be something. And I'm so looking forward to it. And it's so necessary, because how could we think this was not a big aspect of ascension, or wasn't important? Because it is important to shift into that fifth dimension for things to move. It can't just be me in my world or somebody else I know. It's got to be the divine masculine.
Yeah, and then there's all the raising of the children that come with that, you know, who are here essentially to be our teachers as well.
That's right. And they've been born already, these children. They live, they exist in this world we live in. And they keep coming, and that's really awesome. And then some of them have returned, and we know who they are, who they've been in our lives. Even in this current life, I have somebody who was with me in this current life that has returned, and I
Yeah.
haven't left the planet yet, but he's returned, you know. So we will see with our own eyes.
Yes, yes, yes. And we'll recognize that our divine masculine has been with us in other lifetimes as well. And one of the things that Gaia said to me that is, I think, very interesting is she said that divine counterparts have been coming to the planet for a long time, but in this time, there are a lot of us who have come at the same time.
Okay.
And that is part of the reason for that is to create this new and higher way of being. So in the past, one has held space while the other was here on the earth. So we've been one another's guardians and protectors.
Yes, 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 absolutely.
And
Uh,
so
uh,
now lots of us are here together.
yeah, so it's really interesting that you say that, because I know a couple of years ago, I couldn't feel mine was on the planet. I felt, and then I realized, you know, my divine counterpart was off planet. And then I couldn't quite understand how, when I met the physical side, the physical person that is supposed to be this, I thought, how does that happen? And my understanding was the awakening to that has not happened yet. The awakening to that has not happened yet, and it, and when that happens, it will almost be like, you know how they say walking. It will almost be like it's almost going to be like walking. You're not going to actually, the person's not going to recognize themselves, because they're going to just have such a profound experience, and they're just going to know. They're just going to say, well, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I thought, okay, so it's like I've been getting these downloads already about divine counterparts without knowing it. That's
Yes, I
interesting.
think that some of them will come in exactly that way. I've definitely done readings for people where that has shown up.
Okay. Okay. So it's going to be a very exciting time moving forward
Yeah.
into this, because this is a world we have not seen in this lifetime. We've seen it, but we haven't really seen it, right? Because people are together. Quite often people are together and they are divine counterparts, but for each other, not necessarily with the energy of union that's going to impact the planet and the collective.
Mm.
And that's going to be quite a different world to live in. Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, well, we are in that experience or on the edges of that experience as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
where there will be lots of movement to enable these counterparts to come together.
Mm, good, good. Really good to hear that. And it's obviously very close. I think it's very close. I keep thinking in the next 12 months, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if I heard that somewhere or if you said
Well,
that.
what I've been shown is that we're in the beginning of it now.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of movement during this month.
So speaking of that, yeah, this month, firstly, April is a big month on all aspects, in all
Massively.
aspects, right?
Yeah.
Astrology, the astrologers have been really going at it about April and how big it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but you're saying it's big because of this, because of this aspect too. And wow, and I mean, April feels like it's a big mishmash of everything, and it's almost like the tide is so fast. It is so high and it's so fast.
Yeah.
We're having to just keep moving. It's, stay on the board.
Yes, and it's very expansive as well as being very fast. So it is that we're having experiences that are super expanded, super accelerated, and yet at the same time, time feels very stretched.
This is true. It does feel stretched, and then suddenly it went too fast. Like,
Yeah,
how do
it
we get to the
does.
end of the week? Oh, like, what? How we,
Yeah,
Because in some ways April feels slow, but we seem to get to the end of the week so much faster than usual, right?
yeah. I've
I,
been showing these really big undulations and that we're riding into the trough and then up over the peak. And so that's our experience in the day, which for me is why it's very hard for me to go, what time is it? What date is it? That whole movement of time, date, and place for me is really challenging at the moment.
Well, for me too. And the interesting thing is, I felt like a person who's elderly, like a third dimensional elderly concept in the last few days, because for one, I was driving to Lake Rotoponamu with a friend, and it felt like she was driving too fast, and she was only going at 80.
Ah,
Okay, it just felt really fast. So we shared the driving, and when I was driving, then I couldn't feel how fast the car was, but I was going at 80 when it was necessary, sometimes 100. Then I also felt like coming back, because I did more of the coming back driving. She did more going there, and I was driving more at night. I could not seem to cope with the bright lights of the cars behind me.
ah,
And they got to some point, because, I'm driving at 80, maybe sometimes 60, because the weather was not, we didn't have any bad weather as such, but it was pretty dark coming from Rotoponamu up to Auckland. If you have an idea of the road, right? Pretty dark road. And so I generally, if I'm uncertain, I will drive slower rather than faster. And it was someone else's car that was driving, but I just felt that. But the lights behind, when you go into the overtaking, what do they call that lane? The one that you can overtake, go into the left lane, passing lane. They were overtaking, and the brightness was just harsh on my eyes.
Yes.
I couldn't cope with it. And so I don't know if it's because of how crystalline we're becoming.
Well, we've definitely been having eye upgrades. We've been having eye upgrades and ear upgrades, and we've been having I want to say heart openings.
Yes, because of palpitations you might feel from time to time.
Well, it shows up to me that we are birthing ourselves through the stargate of the heart.
Okay, that's awesome. I like that, birthing ourselves through the stargate of the heart. I've definitely had things going on with my eyes, my ears, and every now and then I feel like my heart does a bit of a flip. I know that it's ascension, but having said that, I don't encourage anybody who's having any experience with a heart to suddenly say, "Oh, it's ascension," and not do anything in case it's a serious.
Exactly. It's good to be cautious and go and have checks.
Yes, definitely. So I know there was something I was going to ask, and it's just gone out of my. I was talking about feeling older and feeling like I'm now, Miss Daisy or Miss Rosie, needing to be driven or whatever. And then today, my daughter, I had this pack of curlers that I wanted to try, hot curlers that I wanted to try. And then I haven't had curlers in my hair for maybe 20 years now. And I said to my daughter, "How do you put this on?" And she said, "Come on, Mom, do you know how to do this?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've actually forgotten how to do that. What's wrong with me?" And then I don't remember things. I don't remember the name of something. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? How can this is concerning, right? But I'm also
no, I don't think so. I think that these are just symptoms of having a dimensional shift.
Yes.
So it's quite funny, isn't it? How the word dimensional and dementia have some similarities. But I remember when I went through an awakening, a strong awakening, another time, and I was living with my son, and he said to me, "You're so annoying." And I said, "I know." That I know, but I know the word, and I know that I have that word, and I cannot find it. I feel as though I'm in my brain with a torch looking for the word that I know should be stored there, and I cannot find it. And that was my experience of this upgrading consciousness that I went through. And I feel that we've gone through that on another level just recently.
Yes.
But part of the challenge is because we're having experiences that we don't have words for now.
Yes.
It isn't that we know the words.
Okay, that's good to
That
know.
we have to find new words. That's what I believe that we're having this
Wow.
experience of.
I've never thought about that like that, but wow, that makes so much sense. I mean, we know that we're not losing our minds, but it's just that it's becoming so regular or frequent that you have to think, oh, what did I go there for?
Yeah,
What
well,
am I
I
doing
think you
today?
could liken it to if you think about having a plastic sheeting on a hill and you cover it in butter and you're trying to find your way down the hill.
Oh
You
my
are
gosh.
just going to be sliding off everywhere. And I feel it's a bit like that.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. Um, it's good that we talk about this, and it's good that we understand it that way. Because I was going to say, I feel like this is helping us, assisting us to be more present.
Yes, I agree. I think a lot of what is going on now is about that. It's to collapse us into the 0 point, to collapse us into present moment,
Yeah.
because that is where our power of decision making belongs, is now to be in present moment,
Now.
or this or
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Not
this
based on
or not.
programming, just now.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, right now, in this present moment breath.
Mm. Interesting. Very interesting. Interesting how there's so many things coming up, even even in our families. I'm finding in my family, like things are coming up that are really subtle, but they are there for reasons. So one of the reasons is part of this awakening or transformation ascension process. And it's there to, I don't know, I think in some ways to give us opportunities to express unconditional love to people, right? That's the one thing. Or, in that aspect, and I really found in this last 12 months, my that's come to, like my I've been put to the test about, well, I don't know if it's put to the test, but I've really found myself having to think about how I love people. And am I conditional in who I love? And if somebody in my family, for example, annoys me, if my son in law really annoys me, how unconditional am I going to be with him? Come on, put your money where your
Good
mouth is,
question.
Rose. Exactly. How do I see him? Do I see him as a divine masculine, or do I see him as an annoying man?
Or do you accept him as he is?
Exactly. Exactly. Challenge, eh? I think
Mm.
I think I think in that respect, many people are going through these things in terms of family relationships and things like that. And we have to
Well,
grow
that was
through it.
my experience of this weekend. One of my cousins has spent the last year creating a family reunion for my father's side of the family, and um, I set off to go, and I came home again because by the time I got to the Harbour Bridge, I was guided to turn around and come home. And then this morning, when I checked all of the roads, there would have been, and I knew it wasn't about getting down there. I knew it was about getting back. And there was not one road that would have been available to me to get back from there to where I live today.
Wow. Wow. Good you listened, eh?
Yeah, yeah. So I
Mm.
had this interesting experience of, um, well, I suppose I could talk about it. um, I I asked my divine masculine, well, should I be going? And I heard him say to me, well, just do the first part. And so I thought, okay, well, that's good advice. And so I headed off. And so for me, I had thought I would get to the Bombays and then I would stop and I would tune in and ask again. But just at the very last turn off before the Harbour Bridge, even though I wasn't in, like I hadn't called him in or I wasn't in dialogue with him, I heard him say, turn around and go back now. And so I thought, well, I will. So I took that last turn off, whipped around and came back home, and I started to feel better. So I recognized that I had this clenching in my gut, and that as I drove further north to come home, I felt better. And so, yeah, I just trusted that. And then, yes, this morning when I looked, there were all of the roads that I would have needed to use to come back were closed. No matter which way I went, whether I went through the Waikato or up the Coromandel.
So it's a perfect example of guidance from the divine, from your divine counterpart.
Yes, yes.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
Sharron, on that note, do we conclude part one? Is there something else you want to say about this before we go back and record part two? Because I feel like that's a very important thing you said there.
Yes. Well, I feel that we're in this time where this alignment between divine counterparts is coming into play in the physical.
Yes. Oops, sorry about that. Shaking the camera.
And it's not something that I'd even thought about doing. But I had this moment, so maybe I'll just say this and then we can close off. But I had this moment of where I cried. I cried because I really need to have a man's brain on this. And so I rang my son and he said, Mum, I can't help you at the moment. I'm in the middle of something. And I said, look, that's fine, because it was fine. And then I hung up and I started to cry, and I thought, I just, for the first time, even though I've met him, even though I've met who I believe is my divine masculine, but for the first time I cried and I said, I really need you, and you're not here, and I just wish that you were. And then I thought, well, hold on a minute. I can tune in. And so I tuned in and I connected in, and that was what he said to me. Go and do the first part. And so that's what I did. And then just before I got to the Harbour Bridge, he said, you should turn around now. And so it was quite a profound experience, really. And
it is
as
a
it
profound
turns
experience.
out, it was perfect. I missed the family reunion, but I would not have got back to here. So yeah.
Thank you. On that note, everybody, we are going to conclude this part one of this topic of the divine masculine. And we will be coming back with part two. And in part two, we talk about divine counterparts. And if you're wondering what that's about, also known as twin flame, but twin flame has just gotten so out of context. I like divine counterpart.
Yes, me too.
Yes. So, Sharron, anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
Well, just know that the fact that we are here on the earth at the moment is a blessing. We're here at the most exciting time in the history of the multiverse.
Absolutely. And this time, we already got it. Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sharron. Thank you so much for your time. And everyone, thank you for watching. And we will be back with part two. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.